Let's look at what President Trump posted and some of the statements that came later from both President Trump and then Marco Rubio. All right, so here, President Trump posted this: the United States of America is in serious discussion with a new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. Great progress has been made, but if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by following up and completely obliterating, holy crap, all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Hark Island. He doesn't say like which parts of Hark Island, like all of Hark Island. Oh, he's saying, and possibly all desalination plant. Holy crap. Which we have purposefully not yet torched. This will be in retribution for our military soldiers and others that Iran has butchered and killed over the old regimes for old regimes. So, guys, apparently we have a completely new regime, according to President Trump, and the people who did that before are the old regime's 47-year reign of terror. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So there was that. Let's actually listen to some of the recent statements that he has made so far.
You had offered a 15-point plan to Iran. Did they ever come back?
Yeah, they came back on the 15-point plan. They gave us most of the points. Why would?
So there's a lot of speculation regarding who President Trump is talking to. He said that there was 15 points, and President Trump is saying we're talking to them, somebody from within the regime, and they gave us most of the 15 points. Remember, guys, these points, like some of the most important ones, are basically giving up the entire enriched uranium that they have and basically be creating a framework where they will never be enriching uranium again. If this is a real conversation, which again we don't know if they are having actually a conversation with anybody inside Iran or not, I suspect they are, but it might be just mind games. But if anybody is basically agreeing to any of that, is nobody that we're talking to. Like, this is a whoever that guy is completely in contradiction with whatever the IRGC stands for. And it might be the reformers. If it is the reformers, these people have no ability to control the IRGC, which is very interesting. He's saying they agreed to most of the 15 points.
Did they ever come back?
Yeah, they came back on the 15-point plan. They gave us most of the points. Why wouldn't they?
You make it sound like they made some concessions. Can you identify those?
Well, they're agreeing with us on the plan. I mean, we asked for 15 things, and for the most part, we're going to be asking for a couple of other things.
And guys, remember, like previous times when President Trump said, like, oh yeah, they're negotiating, they're agreeing, they're being reasonable. A few days after, he bombed them. And he was like, then he came out and said, actually, the negotiations are not going very well.
Just to prove that they're serious, they gave us all these boats. What I talked about 4 days ago,
okay, now he's saying to prove this, they gave us all these boats. So are the people who are agreeing with these 15 points the same people who gave him those 15 boats, and then the 10 boats, and now apparently there's 20 more boats, so maybe a total of 30. But because our understanding, like many people's understanding, was the person that managed to give them the boats might have been Ghalibaf. That's what people are speculating. But Ghalibaf is not in a position, that would be suicide for him to come and give up the enriched uranium. You would think that somebody that is that willing to give up so many points, would be the reformers. But now the way he's talking, it seems like he's suggesting that maybe they're the same people, which makes it very mysterious, by the way.
I said they gave me a present, but I didn't think I was at liberty to say what it was. What it was 8 plus 2. It's 10 massive boatloads of oil. And today they gave us another present. They gave us 20 boatloads of oil.
So 20. So who is this person that has this much control over what happens at the Hormuz Strait, it can't be the reformers. The reformers have been completely sidelined. But whoever has this much control over the IRGC, well, I mean, at least the parts of IRGC in the south, because remember, after the killing of Khamenei, the IRGC has been geographically fragmented and localized. So I know, like the people, for example, in Khatam al Anbiya, they would not tolerate this. The problem is that if this, because they need to be answerable to their followers, to the last remaining supporters of the regime. They are not going to tolerate any of this. And if there is a way to demonstrate that this bending of a knee, this negotiation has happened, it will be devastating for the Islamic regime stability inside. And this is like, you could basically deny this. Like, you could basically give President Trump 30 ships, 10 at first and now another 20, and then when he says that, go on your local media and deny that he's saying he's, he's full of shit, like he's lying, right? But the thing is, with the enriched uranium, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to move out 60% enriched uranium and then the whole world confirms that it's out, and then for you to deny that happened. I mean, there's a I mean, I know these people are delusional, but there's a limit.
They gave us 20 boatloads of oil. That starts being shipped tomorrow. We're having very good meetings, both directly and indirectly, and I think we're getting a lot of very important points.
So there was that. Let me see. Let me play this.
With Iran,
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. Look, I would say we're just like we're ahead of schedule on the ballroom. In a much bigger way, we're ahead of schedule with Iran.
Okay. By the way, that's a quote for the history books. Okay, I would say we're in the we're ahead of the schedule for the ballroom. In a much bigger, similar way, we're ahead of the schedule for Iran. Okay.
Weeks ahead of schedule. If you would have said that in 3 days we were going to knock out 158 ships, their entire Navy, which we did, we knocked out their entire Air Force. We knocked out most of their missiles. That's why you see missile attacks, but they're sputtering. And we have a group, it's really a new regime. It's a new group of people that we've never dealt with before, that are acting very reasonable. It is truly regime change.
Okay, acting more reasonable. So I do want to hear from you guys who. Thank you. Let me see if I want to share this. Actually, this is important as well. Let's share this as well. This is a big one because a lot of people think.
But they gave us,
that,
I think out of a sign of respect, 20 boats of oil, big boats of oil, going through the Hormuz Strait. And that's taking place starting tomorrow morning, over the next couple of days. And I would only say that we're doing extremely well in that negotiation, but you never know with Iran, because we negotiate with them and then we always have to blow them up, whether it's the B-2 bombers or just terminating, as an example, the Iran nuclear deal done by Barack Hussein Obama, probably the worst deal we've ever done as a country.
All right, so that was the last one. So he said that you never know with Iran. You negotiate with them and then you have to blow them up. Okay, so this is another confirmation that negotiation doesn't mean that. I mean, it would be so amazing if this happens the third time, because the first time it happened during the 12-day war. They were negotiating, and then in the middle of the negotiations, then just boom. And a lot of people were concerned that these negotiations might mean that they're going to appease them, but then all of a sudden they attacked right in the middle. And then we had the Operation Epic Fury started right when everybody was thinking like, oh no, they're not going to attack. President Trump is constantly signaling that they're negotiating with them, that he's not going to do anything. He keeps complimenting them. He says that we're going to get a deal, and then boom, he just hit them. And now it's happening for. I mean, if this happens for a third time, it would be amazing. that is just we just keep doing this. By the way, the Islamic Republic's analysis, I watched their state TV. That's their analysis as well. They're like, they specifically said on the Islamic Republic state TV that the when President Trump talks about negotiation, that's when you have to be the most concerned, because every time he has been hitting us was right after he said that, oh, things are going well, we're negotiating with them. So they're they're actually having the same analysis as we're having here, which is bizarre, which is interesting that that's what they're saying. But again, whether this negotiations is going to turn into a ceasefire or not, and again, remember, we mentioned constantly in the show that when President Trump is talking about the deal that seems to be, at least by Marco Rubio and others, being signaled here is that they want full surrender, not like anything that will make their regime be able to last. However, when President Trump comes out and keeps saying that, oh, the regime has already changed, we already have regime change, people's impression is that President Trump is trying to find a way to get out of this and basically get to a ceasefire. And whatever you think, because like one way of looking at this is that, people like Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio, there are basically managing things for us for all of this to happen more completely. President Trump is trying to do a ceasefire, but there's no way out, and because the regime is not cooperating, then President Trump keeps getting disappointed and he does a full complete destruction. It doesn't really matter what's really happening in his mind. What you need to know is that the regime, it can't is dealing is stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it doesn't know how to get out of it. And even if President Trump wanted to give them a way to get out of it and do a ceasefire, the regime can't take that offer because it will basically start their own internal I mean, they already on a free fall right now, but that would escalate it internally. uh the the regime, like, I'm getting so, like, by the way, I spend a lot of time on regime accounts and their followers, and they're having a civil war. Like, they have this internal division like never before. And what President Trump is saying, and then later on, once some of you start to talk about this, I'm going to start playing what Marco Rubio mentioned regarding all of this, because that is very enlightening regarding what's really happening behind the scenes. So I'll play that for you guys as well. But whatever the intentions are, you could say like, oh, this is 4D chess, okay, or not, but the effects are just as if this was a 4D chess, right? The effects are that the messages that President Trump and Marco Rubio is putting out there regarding, oh, some of these are, we're talking to some people. Marco Rubio also clarifies, I'll play it for you later, that we are talking to some people. They are being a lot more reasonable. They are talking in a way that nobody has from the regime has talked to us before, and we can't tell you who they are because that will turn the regime against them, that they might actually get eliminated by the rest of the regime, like some other parts of the regime. Which is, by the way, guys, I told you this exactly, that this is what's happening before anyone from the intelligence, from the US intelligence or Israeli intelligence, like way before anybody told you this, and way before President Trump confirmed this and Marco Rubio confirmed this, I told you that this is exactly how this is going to happen. So this is a huge verification that, like, I know what I'm talking about here, right? But but I'm not an expert in reading people's mind and thinking, like, and telling you whether President Trump is doing all of this intentionally or not. It doesn't really matter. The effects are the same. All we could analyze is what we see is happening on the ground. And the effect is that this messaging is making some people from the regime looking for and trying to figure out who is it that President Trump is talking to. And by not telling you, by when Rubio comes out and says like, oh, we're talking to somebody and we're not going to tell you who they are because that will make some people within the regime to start attacking them. Well, you actually made things worse for the regime, because now instead of them going after one person because they don't know who this person is, they're going to go after everybody. Everybody is going to suspect everybody else. And both the Durka jihadi mindset people and the pragmatic people, because the Durka jihadi people, they're going to think like, oh, we're being betrayed. And they are very, very sensitive about that because they think that they lost Khamenei because somebody gave up him. They know that there are so many people within the regime that are leaking information. So they believe it. They believe that somebody within the regime is now is cooperating and so cooperating with the Americans, and they're going to think that we're being betrayed. But also the more pragmatic people who do want to bend the knee to President Trump, who do think like, yes, we need to give these Americans whatever they want, or else like maybe we will all die. But we have to give them all they want in a way that our own followers don't turn against us. They are going to notice that, okay, somebody is negotiating with Americans, and it's not me. So I'm being like, I do want us to bend the knee to President Trump, but I'm being left out of here. Like, who is doing this negotiation that is not me? So even the more pragmatic minded people, and guys, when I say pragmatic, don't think I'm talking about people who are moderate, people who are more pragmatic for the sake of Iranian people and Iran. When I say pragmatic, I'm just talking about on a Durka scale, people that are more self-interested, people who are more motivated by their own self-interest rather than fighting and dying for the Mahdi, right? So guys, remember the Durka scale. Like, if you're new here, I will just tell you how to evaluate. So one end of the Durka scale, like I'll give you the full spectrum. Okay, so the most pragmatic minded people are the so-called reformers, and the most important people on that end is Hassan Rouhani, Mohammad Khatami, and Hassan Khomeini, grandson of Ruhollah Khomeini, and also Javad Zarif, and Araghchi. Okay, so that's that. And then we come a little bit less pragmatic, just a little bit more Durka. We have people like Larijani, who's dead, and Ghalibaf. Then going up the Durka scale, then we get to the Khamenei camp, people who are loyal to the Velayat Faqih, the guardian of the jurist, the Beit Rahbari, the office of the supreme leadership. Khamenei and his entire camp are there. And believe it or not, that is not the very end of the Durka scale. The very end of this Durka scale, people who are more crazy, more Islamic than even the Khamenei camp, are the Paidari camp. The Paidari camp. And the most important person in this camp is Jalili, who might be dead, by the way. We don't know, because there was a report that they bombed the place and they thought that he was staying there. There's some unconfirmed reports that he was staying at the house of a Maddah in Iran, and that house got bombed, so he might be dead. But anybody who's associated with the Paidari camp, that is the more Durkat, more jihadi minded than even the Khamenei camp. And these are people who, for example, don't even like the Islamic Republic because it has a republic in it. They think republic, for example, is a Western concept. Having a parliament, having elections. These are all Western. These are all non-Islamic. They hate modernization. They don't like the internet. They don't like phones. They don't like all of this technology. They don't like even pretending to have a democracy like elections, because they think that this is basically giving into man's law, and all law is supposed to be God's law, Allah's law. So these are even more Islamically minded than even the Khamenei camp, right? So yeah,